Welcome to the legend that is the Volvo PV544.
Legend? Yes, I'm afraid it's true, and I'm really sorry. After 13 years of making Wheeler Dealers, I'm now going to be leaving the show.
For 13 years, Edd China was the beating heart of Wheeler Dealers. Every episode, millions of viewers watched him bend over a rusty engine in his orange gloves and explain, in clear and patient detail, exactly what he was doing and why. Then, on March 21st, 2017, he posted a video that changed everything. He was leaving the show. The fans were furious, the internet erupted, and Mike Brewer's family began receiving death threats. So what really happened between Edd China and Wheeler Dealers? Let's get into the details. How the show was born and what made it special. Before anyone can understand why Edd China left Wheeler Dealers, it's important to understand what Wheeler Dealers actually was, and why it worked so well for so long before everything fell apart. The show was created by Michael Wood and Daniel Allam, the founding directors of a small British production company called Attaboy TV. Both of them were genuine car enthusiasts who believed there was an audience for a show that treated cars as things worth caring about and repairing, rather than things to be discarded and replaced. Their concept was straightforward. A presenter with a background in car dealing would find old, damaged, or overlooked vehicles, buy them on a limited budget, hand them over to a skilled mechanic who would restore them properly, and then sell them for a profit. The show would document the entire process, from the initial purchase through to the final handshake with a new owner. Mike Brewer was already an established television presenter with a background in car dealing when he helped develop the show alongside Attaboy TV. He had appeared on Channel 4 programs including Deals on Wheels and Driven, and when his contract with Channel 4 ended, he began working on what would eventually become Wheeler Dealers. The show was built under a working title of Grand Autos before it found its final format and name. Edd China came from a completely different direction. He had studied engineering product design at London South Bank University, which gave him a formal technical foundation that most television mechanics did not have. While at university, he had built the casual lofa, a sofa mounted on a chassis with a lawnmower engine that could be driven on public roads. It became his first genuinely famous creation and led to his first television work as a special effects technician on the comedy series Father Ted in 1994. He was inventive, technically rigorous, and had a gift for explaining complicated things in language that ordinary people could follow. When Discovery Channel brought the two of them together in 2003 to make a new car program, nobody involved could have predicted that they were creating something that would eventually be watched by a worldwide audience estimated at 200 million people across more than 50 countries. The format that made Wheeler Dealers different from every other car show on television was Edd's approach to the workshop segments. He did not rush or skip steps. When he was working on a gearbox or replacing brake calipers or diagnosing an electrical fault, he explained what he was doing in real time, in terms that a viewer with no mechanical background could understand and follow. People watched Wheeler Dealers and learned how cars actually worked. They felt capable afterward, which is not something that any other car television show of that era managed to achieve on a comparable scale. That was the engine of the show's popularity. And it was precisely that element that the network eventually decided was too expensive to keep. Let's explain how that unraveled. 13 years, 135 cars, and a move that changed everything. For the first 11 series of Wheeler Dealers, the show operated under the creative stewardship of Attaboy TV, the production company that had created it and understood what made it work. The relationship between Mike and Edd developed into something that felt genuinely natural on screen, partly because it was. They were different in almost every way. Mike was quick, loud, and commercially minded, while Edd was calm and entirely absorbed in the technical challenge in front of him. The difference was part of what gave the show its texture. Over 13 series, they restored and sold approximately 135 cars, ranging from classic Minis and Volkswagen Beetles to exotic Porsches, Ferraris, and American muscle cars. The show expanded geographically over time. Series 5 was renamed Wheeler Dealers on the Road and saw the pair searching for cars across Europe. Series 8 took them to the United States. By Series 12, they had established a permanent workshop in a rented bay at Huntington Beach in California. The American move was significant in ways that went beyond simply changing the location of the workshop. It brought the show into direct contact with American network executives and their expectations about what automotive television should look like. American car shows of that era, programs like Gas Monkey Garages, Fast and Loud, and Counting Cars, were built on a very different philosophy. They prioritized speed, personality, and dramatic moments over technical accuracy or educational depth. They were entertaining, but they were not trying to teach anyone anything. They were selling entertainment, not knowledge. Wheeler Dealers had always been selling both, and when the American network Velocity took over the show's commissioning after Series 12, replacing Attaboy TV with Discovery Studios California as the production company, that balance was about to be disrupted in a way that would prove irreversible. The move to Velocity was driven by the show's extraordinary audience reach. Discovery US and Velocity had noticed that Wheeler Dealers was pulling in a global viewership of around 200 million people without spending heavily on product placement or brand partnerships, which they saw as a significant unrealized commercial opportunity. Taking direct control of the production was a way of restructuring the show to maximize that opportunity. What they could not see from a commercial perspective was that the audience they were trying to exploit had been built specifically because the show was honest and detailed in a way that most television never managed to be. The founders of Attaboy TV, Michael Wood, and Daniel Allam were the people who understood that. When they were replaced as the production team, the institutional knowledge of why the show worked left with them. When the network decided the workshop was too expensive, the specific complaint that Velocity brought to the production of Wheeler Dealers was direct and commercial in its logic. Edd China's workshop segments were expensive to film. They took a long time because Edd worked carefully and explained everything as he went. The filming required multiple camera setups to capture the detail of what he was doing. The editing required enough time to be given to each process for it to make sense to a viewer who was watching and trying to learn. From a production cost perspective, these segments were the most demanding part of the show to make. From the audience's perspective, they were the reason most people were watching. Velocity's solution was to reduce the workshop segments, simplify the processes being shown, and speed up the pacing to match the faster, flashier style of American automotive television. They wanted less footage of detailed mechanical work and more of the buying, selling, and general entertainment that could be produced more quickly and cheaply. They floated the idea of outsourcing some of the repairs entirely, which would have left Edd functioning as a presenter rather than as a working mechanic. For Edd China, this was not a minor formatting adjustment. It was an attack on the thing that had made the show worth making in the first place. He had spent 13 years building a reputation as someone who showed people how mechanical work was actually done, without cutting corners, and without pretending that things were simpler than they were. The workshop was not just a set piece in the show. That was the whole point. He also had specific issues about how the new production team was selecting projects. In an interview after his departure, he said that the producer was choosing cars without asking for his input, and that in some cases the budget and timeline assigned to a particular restoration were completely unrealistic. He was being asked to commit to jobs that he knew from experience could not be done properly within the constraints being imposed on him. The corners he was being asked to cut were not just cosmetic. They were the kind of corners that would have meant showing a repair as complete when it was not, or glossing over a process that required genuine explanation, or pretending that something difficult was easy when the whole reason people trusted the show was that it never did that. He tried to negotiate. He raised his concerns with the new production team and with the network. The response he received did not satisfy him. The direction the show was heading was set, and it was not the direction he was willing to follow. So, what did he do about it? The video that detonated everything. On March 21, 2017, Edd China published a video on his YouTube channel explaining that he was leaving Wheeler Dealers. The video was measured and professional in tone, but the content of what he said was pointed enough that its impact was immediate and enormous. He described the new production company finding the show too difficult to make in its current format. He said that the detailed and in-depth coverage of his workshop fixes, which he described as the backbone and unique selling point of the program, were something that Velocity felt should be reduced. He acknowledged that the workshop segments were the hardest part of the show to produce, and that reducing them would save the production considerable time, effort, and money. But he was clear that this new direction was not something he was comfortable with, because the corners he was being asked to cut compromised the quality of his work and would erode his integrity as well as the integrity of the show itself. He revealed that his only option was to let Velocity get on with it without him. The fan response was immediate and at times extreme. The internet turned on Wheeler Dealers and on Mike Brewer in particular, despite the fact that Mike had not made the decisions that led to Edd's departure. Mike was the face of the show who remained in place after Edd left, and in the absence of more information, he became the target for an enormous amount of anger from fans who felt they had been robbed of something they loved. 6 days after posting the departure video, Edd published a second video, this time addressing something more serious. He explained that Mike Brewer had telephoned him over the weekend to tell him that his wife and daughter were receiving significant online abuse, including death threats, as a direct result of the coverage around Edd's departure. Edd used the second video to ask his fans directly and firmly to stop. He made clear that Mike's family had nothing to do with the decisions that had been made, and that the abuse being directed at them was completely unacceptable. But the question most fans asked was if Mike was aware of the entire situation and what he did about it. Luckily, Mike decided to speak out as well, and what he said wasn't what anyone expected. Mike Brewer's version of events. Mike Brewer's account of what happened has been consistent across the multiple interviews he has given about it in the years since. He has said clearly and repeatedly that there was no feud, no dramatic argument, and no single moment of rupture between himself and Edd. He told the Road to Success podcast that a guy left his job, and that was essentially it. He said that Edd was working one day and the next day decided he was going to do his own thing. He did not frame it as a betrayal or a falling out. He described the last time they were together as being in a Paris hotel room, where he had just handed Edd a paying job, and they had spent the evening having a good time together. He also acknowledged openly that he had not spoken to Edd since the departure. In an interview with Car Throttle in 2021, he confirmed they had had no contact. He was not bitter about it, or at least he did not present himself as bitter. He spoke about it with a kind of quiet resignation, as though the loss of the professional partnership was something he had made his peace with, even if the absence of the personal one was something he still noticed. There were also tweets posted in the immediate aftermath of the departure that became a source of additional tension. Mike posted something that called Edd a traitor, which was visible publicly before being deleted. Both men have since moved on from the specific language of those early days, but the word existed and was seen by enough people that it became part of the narrative of what happened between them. So, what happened to the show after Edd left? The replacement. Wheeler Dealers continued without Edd China, and Ant Anstead, a British presenter and car builder known for the UK series For the Love of Cars, was brought in to replace him starting from Series 14. Ant was a genuine enthusiast and a skilled mechanic, and he brought something real to the role. But the show's viewing figures dropped significantly after Edd's departure, and the audience that had been built specifically on the educational quality of his workshop time did not automatically transfer its loyalty to a new face doing a simplified version of the same job. Ant himself lasted 3 series before departing in 2020, when the show returned to filming in the United Kingdom after its American period. He stayed in the United States following his separation from his wife Christina Hawk, and the geographical reality made continuing with the show impractical. He was replaced by Mark Priestley, a former McLaren Formula One mechanic turned television presenter who has continued with the show since Series 17. Edd China, on the other hand, did not disappear after leaving Wheeler Dealers. He built something new, on his own terms, in the space that the network's constraints had prevented him from occupying. He launched his YouTube channel shortly after the departure and began producing content that reflected exactly the kind of detail and depth that Velocity had wanted to remove from Wheeler Dealers. In May 2018, he premiered a new series called Edd China's Garage Revival, available on his YouTube channel, which gave him full creative control over every aspect of what he was showing and how he was showing it. In April 2021, he launched Workshop Diaries, another YouTube series documenting his personal projects in his own workshop. Projects like converting a 1948 Citroën H-van into an electric motorhome gave the series the kind of technical ambition that he had never been able to fully express within the format of Wheeler Dealers. The audience that followed him was smaller than the one he had at Wheeler Dealers, but was described consistently by those who observed it as fiercely loyal. These were viewers who had watched him specifically for the quality of what he explained and showed, and they found their way to his YouTube presence because that same quality was still there, unconstrained by a network's commercial calculations. He also holds multiple Guinness World Records for his engineered creations, including the fastest motorized toilet, the fastest bed, the fastest motorized milk float, and the largest motorized shopping trolley. These records are a reminder that the person who spent 13 years on Wheeler Dealers explaining how to repair other people's broken cars was also, in parallel, one of the most creative and technically inventive people in the British automotive world. What became of the relationship between Edd and Mike? A failed dynamic. The story of what happened between Edd China and Wheeler Dealers is not ultimately a story about two people who fell out. It is a story about what happens when something authentic and specific becomes commercially successful enough to attract the attention of organizations that do not understand why it was authentic or specific in the first place. Wheeler Dealers worked because Edd China was genuinely good at explaining real mechanical work in real time. The moment the network decided that the real mechanical work was the part worth removing, they were deciding to dismantle the thing that the audience was actually there for. They were optimizing for cost at the expense of the value that had generated the audience in the first place. Edd understood this clearly enough that he was not willing to participate in it. He left the show at the height of its global success, rather than compromise on the standard that had made it worth watching. Whether you agree with that decision or think he should have found a way to stay and fight from the inside, the honesty of it is not really in question. He told the truth about why he was leaving, immediately and publicly. And the truth he told has been consistent across every interview and statement he has given in the years since. Mike Brewer stayed and has continued to build a career around the show and around his own automotive business interests. Neither choice was the wrong one. They were just different choices made by two different people with different relationships to the thing they had built together. And somewhere in all of it, behind the YouTube videos and the deleted tweets and the death threats directed at a man's wife and daughter over a television show, there is the straightforward fact that for 13 series, two people made something that millions of people genuinely loved. That part does not change regardless of how it ended. Do you think Edd made the right call by walking away? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.